Hey team, and welcome. I'm your host, Kari, creator of MUTHA Life, your destination for all things real talk and parenting. This is the IRL group chat, where we talk about the wild balancing act of pursuing careers and passions while also doing our best to show up for our kids. Join me every week as I sit down with some badass parents in my closet and we talk about their careers, kids, and relationships and all of the weird shit that comes up when you're trying to balance the seemingly impossible. Welcome to this Jewish MUTHA's Christmas episode. I'm so happy to have you here with me, whether you're at home trying to dodge sugar fiend demons, you've got your headphones in while you're baking some cookies, listening in the car while running errands, or you're just trying to find a little distraction because maybe this year's holiday isn't quite what you expected. I'm happy you're hanging out with me today. Christmas is a funny one. Growing up, we really truly didn't have it in my house. Jewish with a capital J, but no one, and I mean no one, loves Christmas more than a Jewish kid. It is indisputably the superior holiday. The twinkling lights, the music, the mysterious man shimmying down a chimney with presents, it's just magic. But what's also funny is, as a parent, running Christmas is a whole different thing. You're chief memory maker. You're buying presents and orchestrating moments. You're making sure the kids are having fun. And while it's still absolutely magic, it's a very different sort of thing from this vantage point. And it is certainly more tiring. It's okay at this stage in our lives to love-hate Christmas. It doesn't make you the Grinch, but man, can you empathize with the grumpiness better than ever before. I can say all of this now because I won the jackpot, married a goy boy, and now I get the Holy Grail, Christmas and Hanukkah. You bet your ass I got myself some twinkling lights, and you can also bet that these days I am yearning for the simplicity of Chinese food and a movie. I thought I would do something a little bit different this episode, given that Christmas lands on my favorite holiday, New Podcast Day. Santa Claus wasn't available, neither was Mrs. Claus, because let's be honest, she's resting after doing all the shit to get ready for Santa's big ride. Since the Clauses weren't available, instead of having a guest on, I thought it might be nice to reflect on the different things that I learned from the conversations we've had so far, and there have been 17 of them to date. I'm a data girl, so let's do a little data on these guests. We've had 17 episodes. I have been live and in your earbuds for 17 weeks. That's more than 20 hours worth of recording time. I've known about half of our guests before they got here, about half I never met before, and about 20% of our guests were dads. Now let's get into the real stats. 35% of our guests have lost a parent or a sibling at a young age. 30% have been divorced, almost half have had at least one career change, and about 65% copped to their careers changing significantly post-kids. 100% of them are parents who love the shit out of their kids. Each one of these conversations, there's been something that's stuck with me. At least one thing that I've kind of repeated back to myself since the chat in the closet, either in terms of my career or parenting or how to juggle both of them together. And I never know what I'm going to get into when I start these conversations. It's important for people to know that. I just sort of know the direction of travel, but almost every single one leaves me wanting to have a follow-up chat because everybody has so much insight and wisdom, whether or not they realize it. So how's today going to go? My past researcher self can't help but try and look for patterns in data. So I've thought about all of the interviews, I've gone through them again, and I've tried to make buckets of different kinds of lessons and observations. Lessons from loss, raising kids differently, fostering closeness with your kids and sharing your passions with them, and maybe, most importantly, just the stuff that's still really making me laugh. There's so much more, so many wonderful nuggets to mine, but for this Christmas extravaganza, we're going to start here. As I've said before, when I start these conversations, I really don't know what we're going to find out together. Is it fucked up that I found it kind of refreshing that pretty much everyone has experienced some sort of loss or trauma? It's not because I enjoy hearing someone else's pain, but rather because it's so incredibly universal to the human experience. But also, trauma and loss is so wildly isolating. We've heard so many stories on this pod this year of losing parents and siblings well before their time, marriages ending, scary medical diagnoses, miscarriage, Just so much hard stuff. And while I will leave you to your own belief system, regardless of why or how these difficult moments come to us, what I found almost intoxicating hearing these stories is just how people move through the pain, what realizations it allowed them, how they tried their best to not let a terrible situation go to waste. After losing her mom at a young age, costume designer Queen Sylvia Accouché started to develop some tools in a life toolkit that you hope no one ever has to develop. Then she finds herself in a marriage that is now no longer serving herself or her family. To know Queen is to know that she is not going down without a fight for joy, a fight for what is good, a fight for her community.
Something that I started doing when I left her dad was showing up for other people, showing up for myself. Because when I was with him in our partnership, I found myself, and a lot of women do this, is we start to drench ourselves in our relationship. And some of my relationships kind of like dissolved, right? So I had to figure out a way to like, this, I can't let this happen. Like, I have to be conscious about like, you know, the energy I put out in the world and what that means to me and what I want to come back to me. So I was like, no matter how tired I am, or if I can do it, if I have just an hour, you know, I'll get dressed and I'll show up for someone.
For producer Tracy Aftergood, her mom was her biggest co-conspirator for dreaming, and her sudden passing only highlighted how critical those dreams were.
My mom passed away 3 days after I graduated from Emory.
Fuck.
So she was killed in a hit and run in Midtown. So to really take it to a serious note on this podcast. So I kind of always say that I was like pushed off a cliff into adulthood at 22. So it was really, I mean, life-changing is kind of an understatement, but it definitely changed the trajectory of my life in many ways that I had not anticipated. And many people thought, oh, is she still going to move to California, and what's going to happen? And I thought it would completely be in vain not to pursue this dream.
For nonprofit founder Alyssa Calver, losing her brother to addiction and later being diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer has culminated in a passion for choosing life that is unyielding.
I think that we impose a lot, like, on society of not just cancer, like momming and parenting and all these things. Like, we have to be strong and tough. Like those memes that are like,
I hate, like, you go, mama.
Yeah. You know? And I don't feel that pressure, to be honest. I don't feel like I have anything to prove to anyone. I know I'm a badass. I feel very good about what I've accomplished in my life and in the past few years with cancer, but I wasn't doing it because I'm like, oh, I need to be strong and fight. I was doing it because I wasn't sure that I had other options. And it was once I finally, like, really, my oncologist and nurse practitioner saw me deteriorating as a human. Like, I was a shell of a human. Normally, I'm very upbeat, even throughout this. Like, my initial chemo, I started a nonprofit. Like, I was really excited about these silver linings. And this period of time, I wasn't excited about anything. I was miserable. And so I did bring it up, can we lower my dose? And because I was in a clinical trial, we couldn't. So there were certain things that I'd have to leave the trial, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, so what does it look like if I do leave the trial? What does it look like if I switch this? And she's like, well, we have other options. Like, we can do that. And that was when I, like, had this permission that made me feel uncomfortable at first. Like, I don't know, can I? Do I have to be the strong one? I have to just survive. I have to be alive for everyone. And we switched, you know, and it's been 2 years, and I do have, you know, a little bit of a recurrence right now that we haven't quite figured out yet. But even if I do and we have to switch again, like 2 years that I've had a really relatively great quality of life. So I could have been like clawing on for 2 more years of hating life. Like, that's so unfair. Yeah. And that's where I feel like we shouldn't for ourselves, and we shouldn't impose our fears on others of lowering the bar because they have cancer.
For film locations manager Dan Cooley, a single dad to 3 teenage girls, his kids act as a laser beam, focusing his energy on where it needs to be, trying to build the conditions for his kids to succeed, despite the obstacles presented by the current dynamic in co-parenting.
We've been divorced for, you know, going on 3 years. And for a while, we had 50-50. So it's within that time since we've been separated where there's been a deterioration for her. And so I think my nature is just when I see something, you know, falling apart, I want to I have to do more myself.
Yeah.
I can't just go like, haha, okay.
The kids are going to suffer.
Yeah,
Oh, well.
like even her failures, even if I'm like upset with her or, you know, because of the choices she's made or things that she's done to me, like personally, I still have 3 kids with this person, and I still like root for her as a parent, as a co-parent,
for sure,
to like do well, because if she's doing well, the kids are doing well.
Totally.
So, you know, but when someone's just not capable of doing that, like you got to do more.
For comedian and actor Jill Talley, her brother dying was the perspective she needed to make changes in her life that were looming but scary, because even the young don't live forever.
He died of a drug overdose, which is really sad. Christ. And we were very close. And so it shook my world up. Like it just made me, I think what it did was it was a kind of a combination of things happening in my life at that time. Like one, hey, a person my age died. Even though he died of a drug overdose, it still makes you think,
you're not immortal.
I'm not going to live forever. And
Yeah.
I'm super unhappy and things aren't good. And I was already separated from my ex-husband. And I was like, I don't think I want to make this work.
Moving on from loss and grief, one of the other things that really stuck out to me was how much people are talking about doing things differently, whether that be differently from how they grew up or raising kids in their own family differently from each other. DJ So Super Sam is a mom and a stepmom, navigating 2 very different stages of child development and 2 just very different kids.
There's also a new parenting philosophy that you raise your children differently because they're different people instead of lumping them into the same person.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, yesterday I was like, they are different people. They don't have to share everything. Like, they can each have their own decisions. Like, that part, which I'm like, wow, that's so progressive.
Yeah.
I was not raised that way.
Yeah.
I think me and my sister wore the same clothes until we were in high school.
Like matching or hand
Yeah, like matching.
Yeah.
And hand-me-downs. And like, raised the same way.
Right.
Disciplined the same way. We went to the same activities. Like, there was no, individual identity, which is like, cuckoo. But I'm sure my mom was like, listen, y'all are both fed.
Yeah.
You guys have clothes. Like, I need to go to work. But yeah, yesterday was like that, and just a lot of big feelings, and okay, she needs space and she doesn't want to share with you, and let's go this way and you go that way.
Director Jeannie Rochar has 2 very different kids, and they need and want really different things. And for her, it's not surprising. And I just loved what she had to say about who kids are and how they come into this world. And I keep reminding myself of this every time my kids surprise me by doing the very unsurprising, being individuals.
I say parenting, it's like the nail file with the gentle shaping. Like, that's all you can do. Like, there is a person that person they come out of you as that person, you know? And so there's a little shaping you can do, but I don't think we can totally change their personality. I think they come out who they are.
For Jill Talley, who's in a new chapter of parenting young adults, it's come with a lot of reflection about what her kids were like when they were young, putting in the time now to make sure that her kids know how special their uniqueness is to her, even if it drove her fucking crazy when they were little.
Mac would go in and the doctor would say, we have to have a shot today. And Mac would start rolling his sleeve up. That's just who he was. And Nora once turned to the doctor and said, no, we're not going to do that today. And she was probably 3 years old. And she just went, that's not going to happen today. And she said it like that. And the doctor turned to me. He was laughing so hard. And he said, I'm afraid of her. He goes, I have never been so tempted to not give a kid a shot because of her power. He was amazing. But he's the one who kind of turned it around for me a little bit. He said, this is exactly the way it should be. You have a son who is so gentle and so kind and so empathetic. And you have a daughter who is tough and has her own ideas about how things should be and is okay saying the word no. And he goes, trust me, it's hard now, but you are going to send them into the world. And when your daughter is a teenager and she says the word no with confidence, you're going to be glad. When she's going on dates with people and they're, you know what I mean, not respecting her boundaries or whatever, that's what you want. And he said, we need more gentle men in the world. Aww. And we need more women who aren't afraid to speak their mind.
What a legend.
Yeah. And I think that's when it all kind of turned around where I went, wait a minute, you're right.
And lastly, on doing things differently, there's David Zucker. He said something so simple, and it's an easy one to repeat in my mind over and over again.
I was sure to forgive them that day. That's the best advice I could give, is to, not let it, I mean, and even in the first place, you don't want to say, you jerk.
Right.
You can't, that really hurts, and it goes into them.
In deep, yeah.
Which is not, so no matter what they do, you have to trust that they aren't jerks. I mean, you never can tell when you're going to raise a serial killer, but that's,
sure.
that
Statistically unlikely.
Yeah, but it happens.
Sure.
So, but basically, just make them feel that they're okay. And that's, I was not made to feel that I was okay.
Interesting.
So I was made to feel
like you were fucking up.
A bad kid. Yeah, it was, there's some bad stuff.
Next up on stuff that has stuck with me, when I started this pod, it wasn't just to have an echo chamber of people all in the same phase of parenting. Sure, some of that is really valuable, and it's good to not feel so alone. But I was really very curious about insights that come from down the line, once you've come out of those initial hard years and have a moment to reflect on what kids are like when they become fully formed people in the world, independent of us. And I think we all hope that in the next chapter, they still want to hang out with us sometimes, share with us sometimes, do life with us sometimes. From the tricky teenage years to parenting kids in adulthood, there were so many good chats in the closet. Here are just a few of the snippets that have stuck with me. So first up is Dan Cooley. He's bringing home the idea that it's all parents' jobs to have tough conversations with their kids, regardless of any preconceived gender stuff. Dads can talk to daughters about sex and vice versa. If you got the solid foundation, you can be there for your kids in all the ways. They're not like going somewhere else to find out the things they need to know.
No, like we have open conversations about, like sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
Like I have a junior in high school who's, goes to a Catholic school and is not a troublemaker, like really great young lady. And but we have discussions about, those things and
Catholic school is definitely not having those discussions
Yeah.
with her. Or if they are,
Exactly.
It's just like, if you look at a man, you're getting pregnant.
Yeah, I have to make up for that and go, hey, you know what? Like, here's the truth.
Next up, David Zucker with his young adult kids, reminding us that sometimes it's not what we say to them, but what we hold back that helps our kids feel safe with us and confident in their own decision making.
She met her boyfriend freshman year, who
Wow.
she's still with.
Wow.
And we love him, but I never tell her that because
Right.
I learned that from my parents. Again, from the wrong thing to say.
So what's the takeaway?
The takeaway is never say, he or she is great. Hold on to her. She's great. Never want to say that.
Because you'll break up with them the next day or what?
Well, whether or not they are great or not is up in the air. You don't know.
Right.
Nobody knows, and nobody knows what goes on in somebody else's relationship. Everybody seems happy and fine until the day you find out, oh, they got divorced.
Yeah.
I'm the piano player in the whorehouse. I don't know what's going on upstairs.
And lastly, Lisa Licht with her grown kids, making sure that her kids always have a predictable home base to come back to. And bonus points, making that home base open to their friends as well. I think that might be part of the special sauce.
Many people have said to me, like, how do you raise 3 normal, whatever normal means, kids in Los Angeles? And my answer is Shabbat dinners or Friday night dinners, because it shouldn't matter if you're Jewish or not. So we had a rule. You had to let me know by Friday at 2 how many people you were inviting to dinner. I could leave for work that Friday. I think the 5 of us were having dinner, and 22 people would come for dinner. It just meant adding more chicken and vegetables. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I love that.
And those dinners were everything.
Sharing passions with your kids. So many of these stories are about people who discovered who they are and what they love by watching their parents give a shit about something, anything. And now they're trying to do the same for their own kids. Tracy Aftergood's episode resonated with so many of you, especially her relationship with her mom and how deeply they dreamed together. That all started with her mom doing the simple act of sharing something she loved with her little girl.
My mom taking me to my first Broadway show when I was 4 years old to see Big River. And from then on, she took me to the theater once or twice a month, and I saw everything. And so musical theater and plays became the lens through which I saw the world as a very precocious only child. And I was just so impacted by the art of storytelling and how storytelling can inform the way we see the world.
For TV writer Kit Stein-Kellner, who grew up in a house of creatives and just loving TV, she's figured out how to share her love of the big and small screen with her son, while also keeping the pressure off that they should like the same things.
He and I go see movies a lot. Like, one of the 5,000 cool things about LA is they do play a lot of revivals around town. So we've seen so many things on the big screen. And I don't know, I think I also just feel like there's so many parts to it. I want him to be able to trust his gut. He gets to like what he likes. I don't want him to feel like there's like his gut is not to be trusted, or there's something faulty in his taste. But also at the same time, we try to do a lot of, okay, but it's you and me time. What do we both want to do together? It's you and your dad time.
Right.
Like, the idea is that he doesn't see me and his dad being martyrs, like we hate this thing, but we're doing it for you. Because again, I keep thinking like whatever we do is what he's going to learn how to do.
And lastly, entrepreneur Bette Bentley. She's showing her kids her passion and purpose in her work, and the pride she has in herself and what she's accomplishing has become infectious in her household.
Can they explain what you do?
Yes, they can explain my whole tech.
They're like selling the product.
Absolutely, because I used to make cold calls during carpool.
Amazing.
So like they know the whole tech pack. I bet you that if you ask them the dimensions of the product, which are really odd.
Sure.
It's like 6.53 inches long. Sure. I bet you they could tell you. Like they just know everything about it, and they're so proud. When we got like our biggest shipment ever. So we have 2 million in our warehouse.
That's it.
A large amount. That's it. But I got like 600 to the house, and Lucky goes, "Whoa, look, all these skimpies."
So we've talked about how people navigate the hard stuff, share their passions, build strong foundations with their kids. But I truly believe most of you are tuning in every week just to have a cozy hang in the closet with your pals. At least that's certainly what I'm doing. Here are some of my favorite moments that still have me laughing. The minute I'm like, ooh, I want what you just said on a sweatshirt, is the minute I know that something iconic has occurred. For actor Brittany Ishibashi, her husband was always giving her shit for overthinking and overpacking until...
One time I finally let him pack, and we went, and I think he forgot underwear for himself.
Classic.
One of the kids only had one pair of shorts. The other kid didn't have a bathing suit, and the third kid had no clothes at all because he assumed that I would pack for the baby because why wouldn't I? Oh, and one flip-flop. He brought himself one flip-flop. Like, how do you pack one shoe?
You couldn't make that up. That's a Bluey episode right there.
Yeah. So I pack still, and he'll still give me grief for overpacking or taking too much time and making my lists and all the things. But at least we show up and everyone has underwear and 2 shoes.
For journalist Chris Gayumali, there was no stone on the internet left unturned when he and his wife were trying to figure out how to get pregnant. But maybe he should have left some of those stones right where they were.
As soon as you're 35, you have to like have a schedule and like, check your levels and, do all this.
The moon has to like be in the right place. Like everybody's chakras have to be aligned. It's like,
I know, it was crazy. And so I was doing like crazy shit. I was like, oh man, maybe years of wearing like super hipster skinny jeans actually like were really bad for like my sperm count or something.
Your sperm motility is just...
I know. I was like, do they have like 3 tails or something? Are they like swimming in like only counterclockwise or whatever? So I was like doing all this crazy shit where I was like, yo, let me like I was like Google like just on Reddit threads. It was like, oh, icing your balls might help like increase your testosterone. So I was like devoting some time to like icing my balls every day and like trying to make it happen.
That's love, man.
I know. It was wild, dude.
Sometimes the funny moments don't need to be complicated. And there was just this one moment when Audrey Rowe, confectionery entrepreneur of Rowe's Macaroons, when she's talking about gunning for her husband, like before they were dating, and she made a game plan for how she was going to do it. It still makes me giggle.
And so it was becoming clear that Ben and I like had feelings for each other, but So I broke up with my boyfriend and came in basically the next day wearing, the correct outfit
Can I just know, how old are we at this point?
In our 20s.
Great.
20.
Perfect. What does the correct outfit look like for Audrey? It's
It was
20.
just the correct top. That's as far as I'll go. So, I know, I wish I still had it.
Yeah, I bet he does too. For Dan Cooley's parents, turns out there are things much more horrific than working in entertainment.
We go to this dinner, and I was close to selling my body, but thank God I never got there. And so we go to this dinner, and I want to tell my mom two things. I want to say, hey, I'm going to work in film. I've decided, I want to work in film. And, I wanted to be like, hey, look, don't freak out. I have this tattoo. So I go, Mom, I have something I want to tell you. And I've got a couple of buddies at the table, and my
I'm
dad's
imagining
there.
the dynamic, yeah.
So my mom goes, you have AIDS? And I go, what? No, I don't have fucking AIDS. And my friends are laughing their ass off. I'm like, what is happening in your mind right now?
That's the bar, man.
That's
the bar. So literally anything you were going to say couldn't be that scary.
Yeah. And this was by the way, this isn't, 1981. This is 2001,
Sure.
And I'm going, no, I don't have AIDS. I got a tattoo. And she was like, oh my God.
Just a
God.
tattoo.
Yeah. And my dad goes, you could get AIDS from a tattoo. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't have AIDS.
Everybody calm
I
down.
don't have AIDS. But I do want to work in film. And my parents were like, oh, really?
For Jill Talley, a self-proclaimed goody two-shoes, some accidental drugs led to a well of confidence that showcased her talents were anything but an accident.
While I worked at Second City on the main stage, I was asked to audition for a show that was a comedy sketch show in LA. You put yourself on tape. I did that. They said, we're going to fly you out. And they flew me and Carell out. And there were two shows I was auditioning for. One was called Main Street USA and one was called The Edge. And I think Steve was auditioning just for Main Street. Anyway, we had to do our improv set and get on a red eye, or do our show, go to the airport, get on a red eye and fly to LA. And we helped each other with on the plane, what are you going to do? Which character? Kind of helped each other out. And then the next day, we had the auditions. During the night that night, I had to go to the ER. I don't know if I had a kidney stone or something, but
Jesus Christ.
I woke up in the worst pain of my life. And I told Steve, something's really bad. I got to go to the hospital. And he's like, I'll go with you. This is, so he was very sweet. Went to the hospital. They gave me some kind of painkiller. And I said, well, I have this audition in the morning and I got to be alert for it. And I don't want to do it if I'll just not take the pain meds. I don't want to be loopy or anything. And they said, no, it's not going to do anything to you. It'll help with
some
pain.
barbiturate.
Right. So they gave me this pain medicine. And I'm a person, I don't even take aspirin and stuff. So anyway, I take this pain medicine, go back home. I hardly got any sleep. I'm sure Steve hardly got any sleep. The next day we both have our auditions. I am higher than a kite. I literally remember there was a couch in the waiting room and all these nervous actresses waiting to audition for this show. And I laid down on the couch and fell asleep. And they had to come out and wake me up to go into the room to do the audition. And I was like, yeah, I looked so cool. I looked like, yeah, what? Oh, it's an audition, no biggie. And I went in and I wasn't nervous, I think, because of this, being under the
PSA,
influence.
drugs are great.
Drugs are great, folks. Do them. Anyway, so I went in and I got that show, and then I went to network. This is network. This is huge. These are the thing everyone is so stressed about. So I go to the one network show, and then later that day to the other network show. I get both shows in one day. I get 2 TV shows. So anyway, Steve didn't get the show. And I remember flying back, and he was fine. He wasn't he was doing little bits of things in Chicago, movie parts and stuff like that. So I don't think he was super broken up. But I felt bad. I felt here I got 2 shows and he didn't get one.
Yeah.
And
he didn't even get any drugs from the hospital.
I know. And I kind of felt I hope something good happens for him. He's a funny guy. I hope something happens for him.
And lastly, editor-in-chief of Wired, Katie Drummond's love story with her now husband. I think the story might deserve an award. How many times can we say that a love story really started when somebody got slapped in the face?
We were at this party and a group of us were playing a game called Whiskey Slap, which is you take a shot of whiskey and the person next to you slaps you across the face. It's
fucking idiotic.
Took my
So
shot of
stupid.
I was sitting across from Carl and next to another coworker. I took my shot of whiskey. Or no, I was sitting next to Carl. I took my shot of whiskey, and then Carl was supposed to slap me. And he was like, "No, I can't do it. I can't hit you." And I'm like quite drunk by then, and so is he. And I was like, "Well, someone has to slap me. Like, that's the game." And this coworker, this poor guy named Dave, across the table is like, "Well, I'll slap you."
It's always a Dave.
It's always a Dave. So Dave leans over the table and slaps me, and Carl lunges for the guy. Leaps over the table, knocks everyone's drinks down, and it's like, "I can't believe you hit her," and starts, beating this guy. Like they're in a physical fight. He has to be restrained, taken out of the bar by force, and then yada 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 professes his love for me. I'm furious. I'm like, "This is so sexist. I can take care of myself. Who do you think you are?" And he's like, "Can I walk you home?" I'm like, "No, like go away. Go away." So then I go to Canada for a week to see my family. I tell my dad this story. I'm like, "Isn't this so sexist and like so just obnoxious?"
And your dad's just smitten.
And my dad says, "But isn't it so romantic?" And then I'm like, "Oh shit. Yeah. Oh, crap. Yes, I have feelings for this person." And went back to New York, went to Carl's apartment for bagels, and we were together from that moment on.
Oh, there's so much more. These stories, they're better than art. They're life. We've got DJ So Super Sam, the child who had the skills for the family barbecue and then turned that into a DJ career, who then turned that into navigating a toddler. You've got Chris Guy O'Malley, the kid writing for himself his whole childhood because it was just part of who he was. And he becomes an editor at GQ, making his way, writing about what he loves. You've got Audrey, the child who loved TV and sweets. So she became an agent in Hollywood and then an entrepreneur making delicious confections. Alyssa, the former gym owner, leveraging her marketing skills and energy to find a way to say fuck you to terminal cancer. Katie Drummond, the curious childhood investigative snoop who tragically loses her mom, a poet, when she was 18 and has been writing and creating and building big things furiously ever since. You've got Paige, the kid who wanted to work at Us Weekly and now is the president of a media company doing everything she loved as a kid, plus so much more that she never realized she really loved along the way. My big takeaway from going back into these episodes is that life is just unpredictable. And no matter who you talk to, their story is interesting if you just take a minute to listen and ask some questions. The thing that I'm really going to be taking into the new year is that sometimes I feel so caught up on what to say to my kid and how to say it that maybe it's taking away from me just showing them how to live and love. I mean, I try, but I think I could recalibrate the energy to focus more on the showing rather than the telling. And even then, when we're doing all of this stuff and we're trying our best and we're showing up, we're doing all of the things, even then, we've got to remember that it's still going to be hard. We are pouring our love and our heart and our time and our energy not to get a perfect kid, because that doesn't exist, but to make sure that our kids know that they're loved. Will they end up in therapy when they're older? Probably. Will they be upset about some stuff you didn't even realize was upsetting them? Sure. Can you repair anything with humility and love? Absolutely. Next year is coming for us, and this time of year always reminds me how relative time is, how fast it goes for us, how slow it feels for them. This podcast has, I can safely say, been the best thing to happen to me professionally in a good long while. And I know it's because it's forced me, with built-in accountability, all of you listening every week, to do the things that fill my cup. I hope today, this week, this winter break, you get a chance to look around to your current situation, stop with the planning and the scheming and the organizing that we all feel is so compulsory, and just eat some chocolate with your kids and laugh. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. See you next week. Team, I need your help. If you love it here, please like and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe to the Substack for full access to this episode's show notes and join the discussion. And of course, follow me on Instagram at mutha, MUTHA.life for a daily look at all things Mutha. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next week for another Chat in the Closet. This podcast was produced by Mutha Life, music by Ronan Landa. See you next time.